Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez is dead. The 58-year-old leader succumbed to cancer this afternoon. We turn again to Margaret for that story.
The announcement of the Venezuelan leader's death came late this afternoon by the country's vice president, Nicolas Maduro. Chavez had shown remarkable staying power, ruling the South American country for 14 years. He survived a coup that briefly deposed him, a constitution that term limited him out of office, and won an October election after his first bout with cancer. He and his brand of revolutionary socialism antagonized 3 U.S. administrations as he cozied up to the world's most isolated regimes in Cuba, Iran, and Syria. For more on his death and what it means for the future of Venezuela, I'm joined by Michael Shifter, president of the Inter-American Dialogue, and Carl Meacham, head of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And welcome to you both. Michael Shifter, Chavez is gone. What does he leave behind?
Well, he leaves behind a country that's very, very polarized, very divided. There's tremendous mistrust. A lot of people had a lot of hopes and expectations with him. There's going to be a lot of sadness, a lot of grief, genuine grief in Venezuela. He was somebody who put his finger on the legitimate grievances of social injustice and social inequality in Venezuela. But in the end, he couldn't solve the problems because he concentrated the power in his own hands. There was only one person who made decisions for 14 years, and that was Hugo Chavez. And that doesn't work in this day and age. And so it's a country that has high rates of inflation, tremendous crime, scarcity of goods, fiscal deficit. It's not in good shape, decaying infrastructure. So whoever takes over, whatever happens, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Is it fair to say, though, Carl Meacham, he transformed a country more than most leaders in the modern era can or do?
Sure. You can say that he led, his personality was larger than life. There's no doubt about that. And he was able to push through some reforms that were very helpful to a lot of folks that needed them. He was able to speak for folks that hadn't been represented in Venezuela before. On the other hand, there's the autocratic leadership. There's questions with regards to his commitment to be a democratic leader. There's questions with regards to his ability to be a rational actor in an economic, in a capitalist world, and the views that folks have regarding the economy now in Venezuela are very, I would say, there's, in his wake, he leaves a lot of destruction in areas that before his leadership or before his tenure weren't as bad.
I mean, like the oil industry,
correct,
for example.
Correct.
Well, so can Chavismo survive Chavez's death? In other words, this brand of, he called it 21st century socialism, or is it unsustainable?
Well, I think it will survive in some form. There are a lot of people that have benefited a lot from this regime over 14 years. They benefit in terms of power, in terms of money. This is a regime that has a lot of money and spent a lot of money. Oil was $10 a barrel when he came in 1999, and it's gone up to way over 100. So there are a lot of people that have benefited from this regime, and it's going to survive. He is a figure that generates enormous passions. Nobody is neutral about Hugo Chavez, and you look at other countries like Argentina, Peronism survives many, many years after Perón. So this, I think, will survive. But nobody can match his charisma, and nobody can have his ability to hold things together. He had enormous leadership, and he had money.
What would you add to that? I mean, do you think this economic approach in particular can survive him?
I think the questions are out there with regards to the survival of Chavismo. I think that, as you've seen with places like Argentina, with Perón, they might survive in name, but the actual implementation of these models, there's no such thing as Chavismo. There's patronage within Chavismo. There's not a model to strengthen government institutions within Chavismo. There isn't an opening up to economic opportunity within Chavismo. So I think there are a lot of questions with regards to this way of governing going forward.
Do either of the at least main candidates or likely candidates in the next election, do they share this vision that he so relentlessly pursued?
I think that, first of all, we don't know if there's going to be an election anytime soon. There's been a funny sort of interpretation of the Constitution of Venezuela.
Which calls for elections in 30 days, but it's being
they
disputed.
haven't done it. And there's been an actual designation by President Chavez to have his vice president, or Mr. Maduro, succeed him, when the Constitution actually said that the head of the assembly would take over for 30 days and there would be an election. So there's questions in that regard. But is there going to be a model of Chavismo going forward? We don't know if it's going to survive the events that are coming up during the next months.
Did he, Michael Shifter, nurture a kind of new generation of leaders that shared his vision, or was it quite particular to him?
Well, I think nobody can. He has a vision. I mean, he thought he was Simón Bolívar.
Yeah.
I mean, his independence hero of South America. And he really had is very, very. The other leaders that are there, the most probable candidate, his successor, Nicolás Maduro, clearly doesn't have his vision. He's been a loyalist. They've been yes men. They've been part of this machine, this apparatus that he's built up, part of the movement. But they don't embody what he had.
Now, what about his reflex, his anti-Americanism? I mean, that was one of his signature issues. Maduro today accused the United States essentially of being behind his illness, expelled to Air Force attachés. Is that likely to endure?
Well, I think Maduro did this. He needs to shore up support and rally the base of. I disagree with Carl. I'd be very surprised if there weren't elections. Frankly, I think that there are going to be elections because the government's in a very strong position. They're going to win. At least the odds are that they're going to win. There's a lot of compassion and sympathy. Chavez's death will further mobilize that. So they're in a strong position. The opposition is very disoriented, very, very demoralized. And so there are going to be elections that gives them legitimacy. So I think that's going to happen.
And back to the U.S. interests here. Do you think this anti-Americanism is somehow really embedded in the political culture?
I think that within Chavismo it is. I think before the tenure of President Chavez, you had a much more mixed view as towards the United States. I would disagree with what Peter's saying about the elections and support within Chavismo. Chavismo is split. Chavismo, we're going to see what happens with Chavismo in the next coming days. We're also going to see what's going to happen with the military support of whatever model occurs or emerges out of Chavismo. And there's the opposition who really would want to have elections. So the opposition might even benefit from a split within Chavismo. We don't know.
Very complicated. Well,
Sure.
Thank you very much, Carl Meacham and Michael Shifter.
Thank you.
Online, you can find a slideshow highlighting Chavez's political career. That's on our homepage.